Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 790, the British Grand Prix review. And I have found a British person, or a British-speaking person, which is exciting. You kind of know what we do on these, right?
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do on race weekend reviews. But before doing that, of course, I have to bring in my co-host, professional driver, the sporting manager of Heart of Racing, number 23 and number 27, Aston Martin in the IMSA series. You know him.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, how you doing?
Hello, Governor. Yes, I speak British.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a little tired,
I'm just going to say right up front that Paul is incredibly dog-eared because he literally just got in back to home because, as it turns out, this time yesterday, his team, Ian James and the entire Heart of Racing team, was busy winning the GTD class at Mosport.
Yes.
And podium for GT Pro.
Yeah.
So that's 2 wins and a podium in 7 days. Paul had to pack, not Paul himself, obviously.
3 wins and a podium.
Yeah, 3 wins and a podium.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the team had to pack everything, drive from Mosport all the way down to Buffalo, go through customs, get a flight home. He gets in today and he's a little dog-eared, but
A little bit.
he's a professional. He rose above it.
I'm trying, doing my best.
I know,
Paul.
Paul.
Put all your effort in, and then once it's all over, you try to decompress, but you still got work to do.
Now you know how Carlos Sainz feels.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that was awesome. That was awesome. You guys were especially watching Max keep that Mercedes behind you guys. That was
tough. Yeah, as I said, he had to work for it today.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, well, at the Glen, he kind of got the easy shift, but he fought that Mercedes off lap after lap after lap. Not easy to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was awesome. Well, it's Paul, happy 4th of July.
Oh.
It happens to be the 4th of July, Paul. And we're recording. We're doing podcasts. We should be out shooting fireworks off, but we're not. We're actually recording.
Should I be celebrating? I mean, I'm happy for you guys.
So, here's the whole thing.
I mean, it's I've done a lot of winning this week. This is kind of a loss in the loss column, right? I always said I would have been Prince of Rhode Island at this point, but we got BOP'd out of existence in the US, I think.
Yeah, you did get BOP'd out. The funny thing is, how fitting it is 4th of July. We're an American podcast recording on the 4th of July, reviewing the British Grand Prix. See how that is? So Paul, crazy. I'd like to personally thank your ancestors for wearing red coats because it made you easier to see.
You're welcome. Standing in a line, just walking along.
Standing in a line, just walking along, just ping, ping, ping.
Step up a lip, lads.
Yeah, but look at us now, all these years later. We're
good buddies now.
We're all good buddies. Yeah, so it's great to have you here on 4th of July. Great to have all of you here listening on the 4th of July.
Yeah, and that's actually, obviously, I was in Canada at Mosport. A big heritage of Formula One there too. Which is great because I remember as a kid watching some of those F1 races with James Hunt and everything from Mosport. But they had their own Independence Day on July 1st. So I've hit 2 in 1 week. This is I'm just firing on all cylinders this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, it's
happy Canada Day to everyone in Canada. So lots of Canadian fans of F1, obviously, and Parc Fermé fans too. I bumped into a couple.
You did. You bumped into Gus and Michael, long-time listeners.
Yeah. And, so had a little chat with them. Gus was asking me. He was talking about his sim racing exploits. So seems like he's doing a pretty good job. Michael, he was back. He's been coming to Mosport since the early 70s, if not before.
Wow.
And saw Jackie Stewart drive around there and all that stuff.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's awful exciting to be here and recording. Hey, up front, also, it reminds me, we got to offer condolences, Paul, to the passing of Alan de Cadenet,
Yes.
long time English gentleman, motorsport aficionado, and I just loved his stuff that he used to do when he's driving cars or airplanes or whatever
Yeah.
features he would do. So yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah. When I was at Le Mans, when was I at Le Mans? 82, 83. He had his own car that the Cadenet driving at Le Mans with, and I think he was driving with Desiree Wilson, actually.
Ah,
Yeah. So yeah, for a time he had his own brand car as well. I think he was helped by a couple of manufacturers, but yeah, he'd been around the sport for so long.
yeah, a
So
long
yeah,
time.
it's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame. So our condolences to the friends and family of Alan de Cadenet. Okay, British Grand Prix. Let's jump into the review. First up, it is the British Grand Prix. It is, as I always say, the spiritual home of Formula One, and it doesn't get much better than Silverstone. The spiritual home deserves a great track, and it gets one in Silverstone. And for my money, Paul, I don't know. There's a lot of corners and straights and stuff that I love in F1, and I'm sure very much like you, if you had to try to pin you down, there's just so many good ones out there.
Yeah.
But man, that whole Cops, Maggots, Beckett's Chapel section is just awesome.
It is. So difficult, on edge the whole time.
Yeah.
Super fast. I mean, just earn your dough there. But Stowe and Cops. I mean, there are still some other great historic corners as well, where a lot of historic things have happened. But yes, that complex, as a driver and as a engineering team trying to get a car to work through there is massive.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then they come around Wellington Strait, which is named after the actual bombers that flew out of Silverstone, the Wellington class bombers, the Vickers. So yeah, it's so cool. And what did we lose when they reprofiled? We lost what, Bridge and Priory, right?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. And I liked Bridge, actually. It was good.
Yeah. But
I mean, I remember the day when that wasn't even in there, right? It was just you came down Hanger Straight, went right into Woodcote, so that was super fast.
Right.
Yeah.
So a great track. I think the attendance is somewhere around 400,000 over the weekend, and you'd be hard pressed to find a better fan base and more enthusiastic fan base than the British fans.
Some of my family, cousins, etc., were there, and I saw some pictures they were having. There's quite on the infield too. They really take care of all the spectators, from little kids all the way up. There are all kinds of exhibitions and things to do. It's quite the escapade. It's not just a race. It's a motorsports cavalcade, so to speak. So I think, you go there, you have a good time, and there's something to do all day long.
Yeah. What a great event, and it certainly, all of that energy. Whenever Lewis would pass Orlando, pick a British driver, but the volume of the crowd was incredible. How you could hear the crowd just erupt in applause and excitement for, and certainly that battle. When Lewis jumps past Perez and Leclerc, and they went crazy.
Oh yes, that was
awesome.
That was. Well, I sort of heard a big cheer when Lewis passed Norris too, and I'm like,
yeah,
that must have been conflicting for most people.
Yeah, that had to be a little conflicting.
Happy about that?
Yeah. It's
Lewis obviously has a massive fan base.
Well, he does. He's got such a massive. But Lando, he's thereabouts. I'll tell you. Looking at the crowd anyway. And I saw some pictures of the post-race event where they were out on stage, and Lando was out there and shooting T-shirts, and people are going crazy.
Yeah.
So
probably the least amount of Max fans, I would say.
Yes, wow. Max squarely in enemy territory. He got booed.
I don't like that.
Yeah, no. And Lewis, to his credit, Lewis said, "Come on, guys, we're better than that. We shouldn't be booing them." Because Lewis has been on the working end of that too, when he was at Zandvoort or whatever it might be, and it's never really fun. It's of course, when you go to Zandvoort, Lewis is the enemy, and you would understand that. And of course, at Silverstone, Max is the enemy, and I'd understand that. And it's always difficult. To Max's credit also, Max said, look, everybody's has their favorites and their opinion. Of course, this is the British Grand Prix, but he said it. It doesn't matter. I don't really care about that. He said because I love coming to this track. The atmosphere is fantastic. The track is fantastic. I love coming here every year. So he does like the British Grand Prix. And most of the drivers do.
They do.
Yeah, it's a great track. Well, let's jump in and talk about the race. It was won by Carlos Sainz in P1, followed by teammate Charles Leclerc in P4. The win of Carlos is certainly a very touching thing for a guy who hasn't had the best luck lately, and it wasn't an easy thing. It wasn't like just a simple, flag to flag win. He was passed twice for the lead, but managed to recognize his pace advantage at the restart, denied the team's request to be a tail gunner, and passed Leclerc for the win. It may have been more difficult as the team had told Carlos to lift and coast at one point, but the safety car sort of remedied that concern over fuel usage, and that gave him an opportunity, along with fresh tires, to, when he boxed at the safety car, to actually go out and take the win. And I was looking at this, and certainly there's a lot of different opinion on this. Early on, despite the wing damage, Paul, Charles was quicker. And it took Ferrari a long time to swap those cars. A lot of people said it took too long. And it cost Charles a lot of time. But it was also, in my mind, it was their failure to stack the pit stops under the safety car that cost Leclerc the race, as he was left vulnerable on worn hard tires to the fresh shod Perez and Hamilton. Now, his defense, Leclerc's defense, trying to hold Perez and Hamilton off, gave Sainz enough space to get out and get a nice lead and take the win. And as much as everyone wanted to see Carlos take his first win, the man in the title hunt against Max is Charles Leclerc. Right. And in my mind, they sort of missed the chance to secure that win for him at a race that Max didn't score a lot of points at, right? So instead of getting 12 points, like Charles did, he could have had 25 against Max's 6. And that's a pretty tough thing. There was this time to pounce when Max is not, at the lead, and to maximize Charles's point gain. And yet Ferrari seems stunned into sort of late car swaps and the obligatory, well, we're going to let you fight, those sort of things. And the only thing I can think of, Paul, in fairness to Ferrari, then I'm very keen to get your thoughts on it, but in fairness to Ferrari, if they'd pitted Leclerc, Hamilton might have stayed out, and he would have been right behind Sainz on the restart. Hamilton tires were only 4 laps old when the safety car came out. Sainz's tires were 18 laps old. And I guess maybe Ferrari was thinking Hamilton, very good chance he would have passed Sainz for the win, and they wanted the race win.
Yeah.
But how did you see the whole strategy? Because there's a lot of criticism leveraged.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. When a team's down and out, they tend to work, the two drivers tend to work together a little better. But when you get closer to a championship, it seems to get a bit more strained. But the drivers work for the team. The team doesn't work for the driver. And ultimately, sometimes the team needs to be cold and cold-blooded and make the right decisions, what's best for them to achieve their aim, which is winning a championship. It's not winning a race, it's winning a championship. That's the aim. And the only way to do that is sometimes manipulating the drivers to push their driver, whether it's for a win, whether it's for a second place, whether it's for a point, to push that driver in a better place and maximize their points total. So you can't mess around, giving them a chance to fight. Yeah. It's just, at this point, if they were close in the championship, you could probably say that. But they're not. And Max has made so many points up recently that they need to start reeling those points in immediately. And they missed on that, quite honestly. Yeah. I get that. If they'd left Sainz out there, Sainz didn't really have the pace at that point. Lewis was pretty much reeling them both in, nearly. Yeah. I think ultimately Lewis had a better chance of winning this race without a safety car at the end. I agree. He was coming on strong. So I understand that, but Leclerc was in the lead. He would have come out. The pit stop would have been short. I can't remember exactly where everyone was sitting, but I think he would have been a better position. And with the softer tire, with that wing damage, it gives him a bit better of an edge. As Max was complaining before, right? You put me on hard tires, and I've got less downfalls than I ever have done. You can't put me on those. So he was in an unenviable position. I think they should have left Sainz out there to cover Lewis doing something, and brought Leclerc in and let him fight it out.
Yeah,
fair and square. But we knew as soon as Leclerc, I mean, they had time. It wasn't like he missed the pit entrance, right?
No, he didn't.
They calculate, they make that decision. So I think it was a bad strategy move for Ferrari. It worked out great for Carlos. Carlos does deserve a race win.
He does, yeah.
So I don't, bemoan him winning a race. He's certainly capable. He's in the right car. He's a Grand Prix winning caliber driver. But Ferrari, I don't think this was probably the win he should have had if they had chosen them being cool and calculating as they need to be to catch Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like, I just, and as a Ferrari fan, I just felt like we left some strategy on the table there.
I thought it was amazing, though, that Charles had that pace with that damage. Obviously, we saw Perez come in with similar damage.
That's right.
Like maybe it was more, but and they decided we're just going to do this at the beginning. We're not going to mess around and try and flounder around for the rest of the race.
Right.
Charles's pace with that damage was very impressive.
I mean, Charles is driving his backside off.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and especially in that battle between Perez and Hamilton and Charles. I mean, he was just driving his guts out, trying to make something out of that. And you can understand him being incredibly frustrated. He enters this race. He's on the back foot after the engine changes and the DNF. He's very upset, so he's trying to take this championship to the end. Max has been on a roll, and you get into this race. You're behind Carlos. You're happy for Carlos in his pole position, but look, we're trying to win a championship here.
Yeah.
No offense to Carlos, but I'm faster. Get him out of my way, or we're going to lose a lot of time to Hamilton, and they did. You know?
You wait 2-3 laps. Give me another lap, and I'll do that lap time. Say, no, no, just get the F out of the way, Kimmy.
Get the F out of the way.
It's just what you have to do. It's a team game. I get some people would be upset. Oh, you didn't give him a shot. It's the Ferrari team, which is 2 drivers and through who knows how many other people go together to make this a team. And that's, you win as a team, you lose as a team. So you need to calculate as well as you can to get the best result for the entire team, not just an individual.
I mean, hindsight's always a wonderful thing, but boy, I feel like they missed an opportunity to close 24 points on Max, totally missed that. And you just can't do that. And as soon as Max had issues and was running in the back, Ferrari should have done everything they could to get Charles the win. Because Max was bleeding points back there in 7th, and they had to get Charles up front, and they didn't. So they'll live and die with that. It's that kind of decision making that will not see them win the championship this year. Let's talk about Max and Red Bull. Sergio Perez in P2, Max down in P7. Max seemed to have this race in hand, if I'm honest. He passed Sainz twice on both starts, the original start and the restart after the red flag. Began setting a pace to win. Unfortunately, a piece of the AlphaTauri debris got lodged underneath his car, puncturing the floor of the car and getting wedged in there and impacting the Venturi tunnel, which cost him serious pace. And this left him drifting backwards and trying hard to keep a Haas behind him for 7th. So much so that he thought he had a cut tire, but he didn't. Such was the back end. And it's amazing, Paul, how much performance he lost on something we couldn't even see. Damage, we couldn't see it.
I mean, Brundle was like, I don't think the camera's off. It wasn't off. He was trying to find something. And as Brundle said, like because I by the way, I had to listen to to the Sky Sports guys. I started listening to the F1 TV, and I just couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much. So I had to switch it over. I know I like to add my little review of how the other commentators were doing it, but I was just like, shoot me. So anyway, yeah. So Brundle was talking about that, and it is amazing how much little. But we know that with the new rules, the underfloor has much bigger percentage of power for the downforce now, and so something's disrupting that just affects everything.
Yeah,
we actually had a scare at Mospel where during the yellow we thought the steering was broken on the cars, but it was just pickup. I mean, the drivers are very sensitive to everything, and definitely with a car with that much aerodynamic need, anything that disrupts it's going to be significant. I mean, he did a good job to hold on to it as much as he could with as much as he lost, I think.
Yeah, well, as bad as it was, he only lost 6 points to Leclerc.
Yeah,
Ferrari's focus.
Thank you, Ferrari.
Yeah. Thanks to their focus on science instead of the title leader. So that wasn't. It could have been a lot worse. Sergio had a damaged front wing, as you mentioned, Paul, on lap 1. Boxed, took a new wing, and then was at the back of the grid. Now, one knew he would come through. So, but you're kind of thinking, well, maybe he's 5th, 6th, 7th. In that range is kind of what you're thinking. But that safety car, Paul, handed him a free pit stop and fresh tires. And as soon as he came out, and I saw him, he, Sainz, and Hamilton come out, and Perez in 4th. And everybody's talking about, Hamilton's going to, go after Sainz. And I was like, Perez is going to go after both of them. He's on fresh tires. He's in a Red Bull. It's the quickest car out there. And I knew it was game on from that point, and it was. Sergio immediately took the fight to Lewis and Leclerc, passing both of them. A brilliant recovery drive from the back all the way up to 2nd. And Sergio even said he wasn't physically 100% this weekend, so struggling with something. So it was an exceptional drive back to 2nd. It's quite a job, and the F1 fans gave him driver of the day. But yeah, it was game on from that point with Sergio on new tires.
Yeah, we didn't see much of Sergio. I mean, I was trying to follow along where he was. Unfortunately, I couldn't see it live, so I couldn't see the lifetime or anything. So, but I was kind of following him on the stand. It didn't seem like he was making a big impression early when they made that stop. It seemed like pitting instantly like that was not necessarily the best idea. Why don't you just go a little further, open your options up, and just struggle with it and see what really it is. But those guys know better than us. They can, read on the data how much downforce they're losing, and said, nope, we're just gonna cut bait. Pull the plaster off and put the new wing on and let Perez go. And yes, he did luck out with that. The safety car, but so we I personally didn't know how much pace he had till that point, and then it was like, holy jeez, he could have won that race if he hadn't been fighting it out with those other guys all that time.
There was a part of me thinking that he came out on fresh tires, he'll get by Hamilton and Sainz, and with Charles on worn tires, they'll get by him too. It's kind of thinking there could be a chance for Perez winning this thing. Didn't quite get there, but running that long, he boxed early, put on the hards, ran really long, and that safety car played perfectly into their hands.
And as we know that, Perez opens the options to teams because of how he can protect tires while still going fast.
Right. Let's talk about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, P3, another podium for Lewis. George Russell, a DNF. The Mercedes does like a smooth track surface, and they've got one in Silverstone. With the new upgrades to the W13, Lewis looked as if he was maybe able to pull off a win here, given the ham-fisted strategy of Ferrari and the lack of Max Verstappen running at the sharp end of the grid. So all of a sudden, with this kind of strategy that Ferrari was monkeying around with, Lewis was 10 tenths. I mean, he was on it, right? and he was going for a win. He said, "I'm going to try to do something special," and he damn near did. It was really close. The Merc takes a while to get heat to it in its tires, and that's a good thing on a long run, as Lewis was setting fast laps mid race. And and I was thinking, wow, this pace is for real. And it looked as if he could sniff a win, but it meant that they couldn't really try the undercut on lap 19 because Sainz and Leclerc boxed on lap 20 and 25 respectively. So that meant that Lewis, because it takes a while to get heat in those tires, an undercut wasn't going to work. And they would be on the hards and it would take longer to get heat in there. So they went for the overcut in this case. But unfortunately, he could only pull out about 19 seconds in the lead.
Yeah, and it stagnated,
Yeah, and it's kind of stalled out at about 19. Just wasn't quite enough to make that overcut work. But he eventually boxed, had that slightly long pit stop. That didn't help him, but was still within view of the Ferraris when he came out. With Sainz being told to lift and coast, this helped Lewis to begin to close in on Sainz. But the late safety car meant that despite having soft compounds fitted, it took him longer to get heat in the tires. This made him vulnerable to Perez, which led to a terrific battle between Lewis, Perez, and Leclerc in the waning laps. And then Lewis came home third. I thought it was a brilliant drive.
It was a brilliant drive. The fly in the ointment for him was Perez. Without Perez being in there, he would have had a lot more room to play with and possibly could have done something and dispatched Charles earlier. But the toing and froing really slowed him down, allowed Sainz just to get that safety gap. It's interesting. I'm not buying into the car's fixed yet, and it's still a little bit off, but I think Lewis is making up for some of that deficit. This is the perfect track for them not to have issues, right? So wait till they get somewhere a little bumpier, etc., a little bit different terrain. We'll see how it all works out. I don't think, the next race in Austria might not be the best one for him either.
No, Paul Ricard will probably flatter them.
Yeah,
because it's smooth and
I think they're getting their head around it a little bit, and I think it's gonna not be as disastrous, but as the season goes on. But these are the times when they need to shine, and they did, and
they did.
We don't know what George could have done, but we definitely know what Lewis did. And so I think it drove a great race. The strategy they laid was the best that they could have done, and as we mentioned before, I think if there wasn't a safety car, he had a much better chance.
I agree.
That race.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Mercedes, kudos, as you say, the strategy group did a fabulous job of reading the tea leaves there. Well, George had a tough day. Started on the hards, got passed by Latifi, and then Gasly tried to follow Nicholas through the gap that was between George and Joe. But it looked like either George didn't see Pierre coming into that gap or he was closing the gap. It's hard to tell. And so he clipped Pierre, spun George into Joe. This sent the Alfa Romeo in a spin, flipped over on its top, skid through the corner, over the gravel, got to the safety road, and the tire barrier, flipped up and over in the air, over the tire barrier and up against the catch fence, wedging him upside down or 3/4 upside down, leaning up against the tire barrier. Brutal accident. We'll talk about that when we get to Alpha a little bit more, but George then was stopped. He had a right rear tire gone, basically. But he stopped his car there on the tarmac at turn 1, saw the accident, jumped out of his car, ran over to check on Joe. When it was kind of determined that the marshals and safety crew and medical crew were there and they were in control, then George tried to get back to his car, get in his car and start it, but his car wouldn't start. We had to be assisted back to the pit lane. Game over for him. How did you see the incident? I'm not a driver like you are, Paul, but it just looked like kind of a racing deal to me.
It was just a racing incident. I mean, it's easy to say, well, he didn't see somebody. Well, have you ever looked in those mirrors? You don't see anything really. I mean, you can see things from, maybe you can see imagery, but at the start of the race, you're just trying to thread your path there, but you don't want to make any big moves without knowing where everyone is, or even little moves for that matter, because it is so tight in there. And I think, George just didn't know. He just moved over a little bit, and there was a nose in there, and Gasly had the right to put his nose in there. They're racing into the corner, but and George just kind of just didn't take much movement, and the really bad case scenario ended up being what the outcome was for a lot of cars.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't fault Gasly for tucking in there, because Latifi just went through and there's an opening there. Was plenty of room, and he went for it,
And as for George jumping out, I would say the marshals in England are the best in the world.
Yeah,
from my experience, and I would say I understand in the past drivers were on fire. The marshalling, the safety was poor.
Yeah.
Drivers, it was a horrible situation back in the 70s, 80s, etc.
Right.
But now I would think, I applaud George's thoughts, but I think drivers nowadays, they would be more of a hindrance to the process than anything else. And as I said, I admire George for doing that, but I really don't think any driver should do that at this point. There are so many procedures in place, so many people to deal with these kind of incidents, that there's no need for a driver to jump in there. I'm not saying that there isn't any occasion ever where that isn't the key to do, but what's George going to do when he gets there? Is he a trained doctor? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we know you can do more harm moving someone than not. I mean, if it's a burning car and you're jumping in and pulling someone out, then that's all you can do. But Formula One, has safety layers, not like no other series. And as I said, I think the British marshalling system is next to none. So,
for sure. Yeah. And there's, because the marshals and the medical crew and safety crew, they've got 3 incidents, 3 issues to take a look at. They've got the health and safety of Alex Albon, who was there and took a big hit on the wall. You've got George himself, which was involved in the incident and stopped, right? So they got to find out if George is safe and okay. And they got Joe, right? So if you get up and you got all these moving pieces, it makes it a little more difficult, right, to do. I agree with you. I think the marshals at the British Grand Prix are the best, and you got to let them do their thing. But anyway, let's talk about Alpine. Fernando Alonso, P5, Esteban Ocon, a DNF, unfortunately. Fernando had a great day converting his P7 qualifying into P5, and it was interesting after the race, Paul. He got that penalty for weaving a couple of weeks ago, right?
Right.
So he was dog whistling this. He was like, in the interview in the bullpen, they were asking him, it was a great result, in P5. He goes, yeah, it'll be better when it's P4, because they'll give Leclerc a penalty for weaving, because I was behind him and I saw him weaving multiple times, and I weaved once and got a penalty, so I'm sure they'll be giving a penalty. So P4 is going to be a great result for us. It was like, ooh,
Fernando.
Yeah, just ramming it up. But anyway, a great result in P5 for him. Didn't see a lot of him during the race. I weren't really focused on him, but he was really kind of, thereabouts with
stayed
Lando.
in touch for sure.
Yeah. And there was even a moment there after the safety car restart where it looked like he might have a look at passing Leclerc or Hamilton. Didn't quite have the pace.
Alonso was there too.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So good result. Ocon had a fuel pump problem on lap 38, brought out the safety car. He stopped on the main straight, pretty darn close where he started on the grid. Stopped there, and the safety car came out.
So where Ocon stopped, I didn't think that was necessary. I mean, it happens in the air now racing too, where people just stop in places they're not supposed to. There's always a lot of talk before races on what procedure is. If you have an issue with your car, pull here, pull there. I mean, basically Ocon had the secondary pit lane to drive through. With an issue, and he just chose to stop where he stopped. Should drivers get a penalty for that? Because if you have a better option, if you're disrupting the race due to not being following procedure of where you should be parking your car, I don't know. I didn't like that. I didn't like that, because I think Ocon had a massive problem. He wasn't going to fire it back up, but he did have other options of where to park that car. He chose to park it right in the middle of the straight and cause a safety car.
Yeah. That was pretty difficult. I thought he had enough momentum. He could have killed it, put it in neutral, and rolled to the pit lane exit.
Yeah, around. But he also had a lot of time, knowing he had an issue, that he could have actually rolled into that pit lane itself. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
McLaren, Lando Norris P6, Daniel Ricciardo P13. Lando had a great start, got ahead of Lewis early on, but was eventually passed by the Mercedes. Lando ran most of the day with Fernando. They were kind of going back and forth, and the battle was really between Alpine and McLaren at that point, and both were waiting for anything ahead of them to happen to capitalize on that. So it was a really good day for Lando.
Yeah.
And it was great to see the crowd. The crowd was just going crazy for Lando. They were just chanting Lando, and it was great to see. He was pretty mystified by just how much the crowd loved him, and he was like, "It's just bizarre. I just drive a car,
Well, so, are you sure they weren't just showing pictures of his girlfriend up on the big screen?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I know you guys were talking about that last week. Grace was really
in lingerie
excited about that. Yeah.
yeah, she was. She liked the whole lingerie spread. I thought she thought that was classy. So it was a great race for him. Not so much for Dan. He struggled. He had poor qualifying, meant he languished at the back. Then he couldn't get any grip, and then his DRS failed. So bad race.
Is that what happened? Okay. Yeah, he's having a stinker.
He is.
But he's signed for next year. But I don't know, man. Norris is handing it to him right now. I mean, there is bad luck. There's mechanical issues, etc. But I don't know why it's happening.
I don't either.
Always thought Ricciardo was,
I just don't feel like. I guess I've never got the impression that Dan is the kind of guy that another driver can get in his head.
Right.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
But, maybe that path choice moving to Renault, it just took the mojo away or something. I don't know. When you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But either way, Norris is obviously firmly.
He's the man.
Entrenched in there, and Ricciardo has nothing to say about it at this point.
Well, and Zach knows where his money's made.
Right.
It's on Lando.
But McLaren can't hang around. They're not in a position where they've got some dominating car that doesn't matter who's driving their second car. They need all the help they can get, like Red Bull had. Right. Yep. I mean, but Red Bull took a long time to figure out. Okay, let's stop this experiment, and that's obviously Dan's not an experiment. He was a known quantity, but if he's not performing in the way that known quantity used to do, they need to change it quick.
Very much so, because it was a gamble. Well, I don't know if they felt it was a gamble. I'm putting words in their mouth, but Red Bull had done all those junior drivers, and it wasn't working. They go get Sergio. Let's see how he does. Sergio's delivering, right?
Yeah.
Dan would be something akin to that. So they've got a young driver, a hot shoe in Lando. They need that second seat to deliver, and Dan's struggling, right?
Yeah.
That's a tough situation.
Zach's amassing a bunch of drivers under their umbrella right now.
Yes, he is. Yeah. It's the Zach Brown empire. Yeah. Let's talk about Haas. Normally we wait to the end to talk about our friends at Haas, but not this time. You've got Mick Schumacher in P8, Kevin Magnussen in P10. Hopes were probably not that high going into the race on Sunday because the team was starting in P17 for Kevin, P19 for Mick. But somehow they managed to find the speed and the strategy and maybe a little luck behind the safety car. Yep. But they got both cars into the points. It's Mick's first points of his career in Formula One, and a little denying of team a recommendation from Kevin. He denied the team had called to stack the stops under the safety car. Kevin said, nah, he stayed out. And, it worked for him to get him in
mistake.
Yeah.
Well, he could have done better, but yeah.
Yeah, he could have done better, but he goes, I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but it's my fault if it was. So, anyway, finished P8, P10, both cars in the points.
Yeah,
as you can imagine,
the car came out strong at the beginning of the year, and it hasn't been strong every race.
Yeah.
But basically, Silverstone is a big aerodynamic track.
Yeah, right.
So it kind of shows that they're did their sums right, and they haven't brought any upgrades yet. And I'm not sure when they're going to. So they're still obviously saving money right now, saving the Russian money for a rainy day. So the car in itself is doing a good job, and those guys are doing a good job with it. So I was really happy to see Mick get his first points. I think it's due.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how happy must he be? You know, duking it out. I know Verstappen was a little hurt, but that must have been pretty fun.
Yeah. I'm sure that was a thrill. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P11, Sebastian Vettel P9. Seb and Lance had a tough day equally on Saturday, but Seb managed to convert his P18 start into the points, aided by the safety car. So he was, he knew that that Mick and Max were on fresher tires, so he didn't put up a big fight holding on. And they kind of went by, but anyway, he brought it home P9. He got caught up in all the braking into turn 1 pole, and he was the one that punted Albon out of the race and put Albon in the wall, not purposely.
It was Aston. I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, so that was Seb who did that. Lance started last on the grid, managed to get to 11th. There you have it.
There you have it.
Lance is
did you see any of that with Seb driving Nigel's car around?
I did, yeah. I did. That was
that's
great.
what I got right here.
Is that the red number 5?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Your man Nige.
Yeah, my man Nige. Thought I'd bring that out. It's a cool picture.
Yeah.
But so that was fun to see. I mean, Vettel, you got to like him. I mean, he's a motorsport enthusiast through and through.
For sure.
And for him to do that, he seemed like a little kid in the candy store, didn't he? Getting to drive that car.
Yeah,
seemed honored, which is nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let's see. Williams, Alex Albon, DNF, Nicholas Latifi, P12. Alex was punted off track at turn 1 at the start by Seb. That ended his day. Little concern over him. They flew him to a local hospital to do some more thorough testing, but he was given all clear. So that's good news for him. Latifi had a great qualifying, made it to Q3. And so that was a great result on Saturday. One might argue the rain was flattering him or the Williams a little bit, and that's fine, but he couldn't manage to find that kind of pace to keep him in the points. But still, a P12, not all bad for Nicky.
Not all bad, but there wasn't that many finishes, so not all great either.
That's true. I was trying to do glass half full there.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, but it was a good qualifying. I mean, that's good for him. But yeah, I guess Albon had all the upgraded parts and he didn't, so that was something to gripe about. But
right,
just a regular Latifi race, I feel. Sorry.
Yeah.
Only like it is, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's somebody's got to say it, Paul, and it might as well be you.
May as well.
Yeah. AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, DNF, Yuki Tsunoda, the Ukester down in P14. Brutal weekend for the team and possibly points thrown away with Yuki clouding Pierre, ending the Frenchman's race with damage. Don't be a Roman Grosjean. You saw him hit 2 of his teammates in Mid-Ohio. That created a little consternation in Michael Andretti racing. But anyway.
I didn't see that race.
Yeah. So anyway, don't be that guy, Yuki, but pretty much took Pierre out of the race. Pierre was also the meat in that Joe and George sandwich on lap 1. But he survived that. So, red flag that came in, fixed the wing, got back out, only to be taken out by your teammate. That's just tough, and Yuki got a 5-second penalty for that, as he should have. But I would imagine there's probably some stern words in AlphaTauri.
I would say, Pierre definitely wasn't happy with that, nor should he be.
Right.
They threw away points. And if Yuki screaming on the microphone after it happened, what's he doing? It's like, what are you talking about? You tried to pass him and made a last-ditch thing. You spun the car and hit him. I'm not sure what Pierre was supposed to do at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Except walk away in disgust.
Which he promptly did.
Which he probably did.
So, all right. And then finally, you've got Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas, and a DNF. And then you got Joe Guan Yu and a DNF. Joe had this horrific accident, getting spun by George, flipping, sliding through the gravel, only to flip over in the air a few times, flipped over the tire barrier, and landed in the catch fence. Thankfully, I saw some fan video of people sitting right there,
Yeah.
front row, and that thing comes
This
and hit
car
that
coming
catch
at you.
fence. Woo! Dangerous. A lot of
Very.
energy coming at you.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Thankfully,
room at Silverstone between it.
yeah,
Usually a lot of room between
yeah,
the track with another track. So lucky
yeah,
it didn't happen somewhere else.
yeah. No kidding. Well, thankfully he was okay. But I got to be honest, they weren't showing any replays, and I was like,
No.
oh, this isn't good, not good. And they didn't show the replays for a long time, so that had me worried. Incredibly scary moment because this is the very first race his father was able to come and attend. So imagine his father excited about his son, and then seeing that happen, that would just scare you to death.
It would.
So anyway, that was tough. The Halo clearly doing its job there. As much as I think you look at that junior race with Roy Nissany, right? You look at Max and Lewis last year in Monza. You look at several of the incidents with Halo.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's doing its job in preventing anything, getting close to the driver's helmet, and that's great. I'm still concerned, and I'm not bad-mouthing Halo because I think it has saved some serious injury. But I'm still concerned about when those cars are upside down or leaning up against something like Joe's
trapped.
was. The extrication time, it took a long time to get him out of that. And I'm just concerned, as much as I love the safety and what it's provided in protection, I just hope that the FIA is continuing to develop that system for quicker extrication because, that's dangerous.
Tough. Yeah, it's tough to conceive how you can do that.
Balance it. I know.
Yeah, it's tough. But the more concerning to me was the roll hoop not doing its job. I mean, the Halo. We've seen these things happen before the Halo.
Yeah.
And drivers, for the most part, because of the dimensions that in the rules, where the roll hoop,
is
and down to the front roll hoop in the cockpit. The driver's helmet is always underneath that, and that's your kind of barrier. Obviously not a perfect system either. The Halo came along, but with the roll hoop was gone, the Halo was the only thing left.
Yeah.
Stopping the whole car being on the ground flat.
Right.
So there's something fundamentally wrong there for that to happen.
Well, it makes you wonder if, and I haven't done a deep dive and looked at the car design at the cowling and where the roll hoop would be. I haven't looked at the car design or fabrication or materials since Halo's come, right?
Yeah.
Since Halo's there, you've got this metal structure. And I'm curious now if those traditional roll bars to save weight are now using some sort of carbon, system in there to add rigidity and stuff, but they're not the true roll hoops of what we would have seen in the past. I'm curious.
I mean, there's certainly so many things you can do. It failed because of multiple hits, I'm sure.
Yep.
Right. And that doesn't happen very often, and maybe the rules like crush zones, etc., they're just tested on one hit. But definitely needs a look at because
agreed.
Yes, that shouldn't have been as bad as it would have been.
Right.
Without the Halo even, but the roll hoop. Yeah, that's
in the past, and I'm talking about, 80s, 90s, I think of Pedro Diniz who flipped over, sideways. And the roll hoop was substantial. I mean, it's metal, very substantial, and it would protect and keep the car off the driver's head if it was upside down.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you, Paul. They need to look at that. All right, let's hand out some awards. The first award is always Move of the Race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Paul, who do you have? Move of the race.
Well, we talked about this a little bit before the
We
podcast,
did.
so I don't want to, I think we're in agreement that
We are.
it was a great race.
Yeah,
there were some very scary parts about this race, but for the most part, it had a lot of elements in it that everyone loves about racing. There was intrigue, there was strategy, there was pace, there was, swashbuckling, elbows out driving on several occasions during it. So I thought it was a very exciting race to watch and to see how everything came out. But yeah, that last little battle there with Lewis and Perez and Charles, and then Sainz trying to get away and everyone trying to catch him up. I mean, I thought it was just a fabulous, turn of events. And if I had to pick something, and I think we both agreed on this, but if there was one little moment in that whole melee was Charles still holding off on the outside there of Copse was just phenomenal on older tires. It was that is what you call big things to do that. It's a whole,
big attachments.
Whoa.
Yep.
I'll tell you. Yeah, that's something.
On the outside of Lewis at Copse. Yeah. Max has been there before.
Whoa. Yeah.
That ended in tears, but this time it didn't.
Didn't work out for him in the end, but that was a move. But I loved the whole.
I did too. Yeah.
It was great.
I did too. All right. Next award is Donkey of the Race.
Sit down.
All right. My Donkey of the Race, and I think we're in agreement, is the protesters.
Yes.
It's just pants on head stupid. And, I really don't care what your cause is, time and place and all that. But when you're doing something that puts drivers, marshals, fans, everybody else's lives in danger, as well as your own, that's bad. There are videos. I'm not going to tell you which ones or who they are, but there are videos of past incidents where people have gotten hit by Formula One cars, and it is horrible to look at. There's nothing left of the person. It's not good. So
it's awful. There's no place for it there. Obviously had no idea what they were doing, where they were, and what could happen. And at least I hope they didn't have any idea, because if they did, then it was even worse. But there's no place for that, as you say.
No, that's just that's just silly. Find another way to get your message out. But it was the same thing several years ago. I wrote an opinion piece on the protesters at the Belgian Grand Prix, and they were literally putting people's lives at risk. They were rappelling off the awning over the main grandstand. You got these people dangling, 40 feet above spectators down there. Anything could happen. I mean, it's just silly. So, all right. Final award is Drive of the Race. Good God.
Not good enough, damn it. Not good enough. Get in there, Lewis.
All right, Paul.
There's a couple of good drivers, but I think Perez, you got to give it to him. I think Lewis had a phenomenal race also.
He did too.
Very, very close.
Charles had a great race.
Charles did have a good race. I mean, his team killed his race. He didn't kill his race.
He didn't. Yeah, he drove his butt off.
Yeah. You know what? You just persuaded me. I'm going with Charles.
Good for you.
Because I really think he drove the wheels off that thing.
He did.
And his team took what could have been a victory away from him. So we don't want to give this award away just for success. We want to give it away for what the driver was doing in the car. So I think Charles Leclerc wins it.
I had Sergio, you got Charles. I agree with that. Let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
All right, first up, I'm probably not going to pronounce this right. Jareem Wargo asks, I have a question for Paul.
Oh.
He said he made a joke on Twitter when IMSA announced a BOP change that gave the Astons an extra liter of fuel. What difference does this extra liter actually make?
Yes. It doesn't seem like a lot, and it's not a lot, but every little bit counts. And it's not just about how far you can go on fuel. It's also about how long is your refuel time. That's something that not a lot is mentioned on, but it's a critical part of when we come in strategy. When we fuel save on the track, you save a liter. That means there's less time, because the fuel in a pit stop, full fuel, you fill it up, and you're pretty low. It's the defining factor on how long that pit stop is going to be, how long you actually stop for. That you can get the tires changed, you can get the drivers changed in less than 20 seconds, but the fuel can take up to 40 seconds. But if you have more fuel on board, you have to take less fuel on board in certain situations to fill it up and get on your way. And the field is so tight that half a second, we always talk about in racing, makes massive difference on where you come out. You have 20 GT3 cars come in, they all stop, and then you go, but you get out of your gate half a second, you can be 2 or 3 places further up the road. So that's
right.
The fuel is critical in so many different ways, actually.
Well, if you think about Max winning the class, and he was what 7/10 ahead of the Merc.
Right. But that was probably a good gap. Most of the time, it was closer.
Yeah, right.
And truthfully saying, the Merc had a bit more pace.
Yeah.
So if we hadn't been in front of him coming out after that last yellow, then he would have been gone.
Yeah.
So that enabled us to fight and hold people off and put ourselves in a track position, which is very, very important.
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, it is.
Let's see. Next question. Brad Sunshine. He says he's back with this semi-annual question. Why won't F1 give a point for pole? My view is that that is more important to success than fastest lap, and it's a bit of a different skill set than race pace, deserving of more than a slap on the back. He says he's been listening for many years, and it's the only F1 podcast he won't miss. Well, thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
He goes, I'm sorry I couldn't connect with Paul while he was in Petaluma and share an IPA, but our kids may have gone to the same school together, or at least the same school. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, hey, Brad. So because Lagunitas is right down the road, so they got some great beer in Petaluma. So I highly encourage Lagunitas drinking. Well, the theory is that pole position is the advantage unto itself, right? That is what every driver wants to go, because that gives him or her the step up for the race. So that's where the bonus comes in. That's
it's kind of like color is its own reward, right? Pole is its own reward and point.
But I do agree with him that it's a feat that should be rewarded. I would say it is. It's a feat as a driver and a team that's probably of a higher standard and level than a fastest lap in a race. As we've seen, fastest laps are very decided on strategy, and if they come in and they put soft tires and belt one out in a race, which has been significant in some points. But I would agree with him that it's a more significant achievement to get pole position, but the theory is always pole position is its own reward.
Yeah. It's a good point. If you gave points for pole position, there basically at this point be 4 drivers harvesting those points all year long. So, whereas you could, on very low fuel, late in the race, throw soft compounds on Fernando and he could go get fast lap.
Right.
Or Lance.
So it gives other people a chance to gain, rather than just the people who already have the advantage in their car.
Right. Maybe that's what Haas should do every race. Go for fast lap.
Yeah, but they have to be in the top 10 to get.
Yeah, true. You got to be in the top 10, so it stops that. Fernando could. So anyway, good question. And finally, Graham Fuller asked, hi, Todd, Paul Grace isn't here, but he said strategy. Something teams either are brilliant, Mercedes, Red Bull, or not so in the case of Ferrari. While poaching other strategy gurus is frowned upon, is there any super fix other than experience or luck? Also, would Paul consider strategies like starting from the pit lane if it was wet or better tire choice?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
you'd always do that. Yeah, I mean, because especially in changeable conditions, there can be significant gains with the right tire in the right place. So generally, you wouldn't do it for a dry track, but definitely so much can be gained and lost on tire choice in those places. So poaching, I think they do poach strategy people, don't they?
They do.
I don't know if it's frowned upon. I think it's pretty active, honestly. It's a pretty important part of everything. And the thing I love about it is, and we obviously we have strategy meetings with our team too, is that it's not just sitting there with an equation and you push the number and it equals what your strategy could be. There's still a dark art to it, and there's still an experience that people can bring to it to gain advantages over other teams. You know, if like it is in car design, like Newey, you bring Newey in, he's got this plethora of experience.
Right.
He's gonna be an asset. So someone with experience who sits there and makes calls. Sometimes you have to make calls right there and then. And there's no way for if you have those guys back there crunch the numbers and see if it's the right one. You have to make that call. Some get them wrong, some get them right. The one that gets them right more often is people that get paid the big bucks. So,
Right.
So I love it, and it's definitely a great skill and one of the most intriguing parts of racing, quite honestly.
Yeah.
We like it because in endurance racing, which we also love, it can have even bigger an impact. And Formula One, the strategy is a bit limited just by the length of the time. And now that they don't do fueling, etc., it's limited a little bit. But it's obviously, as we found out with the British Grand Prix, it can have a major impact.
You know, and imagine, and you'll find out. So if you guys didn't know, Paul's July is pretty much racing this entire month.
It's terrible.
It's
a terrible life I lead.
Crazy. And at the end of July, Paul and the Heart of Racing team is going to Spa for the 24 hours of Spa. Now, that'll be awesome to see. But in those cases, imagine strategy in a 53-lap race at the British Grand Prix where you have to be, on it. Imagine trying to develop strategy for a 24-hour race around Spa with different temperatures, different tire temperatures, cool, nighttime, different density of air, different everything that you've got to factor in, brake wear, how long the pads are lasting, how do you, the strategy is amazing.
Multiple drivers.
Multiple drivers. Yes.
How do you set the car up for the multiple drivers?
Right.
Which drivers do you use and when? Yeah.
Right. Just amazing. So, so spare a thought for poor Paul as he heads into Spa trying to...
I'm sure everyone feels terrible for him.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
I will be tired.
Yeah, you will. Yeah. So anyway, well, all right. Well, that's what we think of the British Grand Prix. Let us know what you think of the British Grand Prix. And again, a happy July 4th to all of our American listeners and readers out there. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we could not and would not do this podcast if it wasn't for you supporting us. So a huge thank you to all of you. If
they also get to compete against us in the...
They do.
Yeah, if you're a patron, you can jump on board and guess who's going to win from that's a fun.
It is fun. I screwed my fantasy GP picks. I had Sergio in the right place, but
did you? Yeah. I did well. I think my team is really good. Fundamentally, the team is good. My picks were completely wrong for the top 3, but I still moved up 5 places. I'm in the top 20 now again. So
yeah, that's great. I've been trying to hang in there with Pierre, and I got to give it up. It's killing me. So anyway, thank you so much. You can go to our website, theparcfermé.com, share your opinion. If you like the podcast, go over to iTunes or your favorite podcast player and give us a good rating. Give us some love over there. We'd appreciate it. And next week, Paul, we will be back talking about the Austrian Grand Prix, the Bull Ring. This is Red Bull's home race. So Max is looking for redemption. Charles is also looking for redemption. It'll be interesting to see how those two teams play out on this track. I'm very intrigued to see. So that is just a week away. So until that time, when Paul and I come back and do this all over again, this is Todd, aka Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.